Hey Wargamers, The Greater Good goes up for pre-order this Saturday and is part of the lead up to that tremendous event, which I am so excited for. We are getting new rules on Warhammer Community, some previews of what is to come in this new Psychic Awakening book. Specifically, on Monday, we got previews for our favorite army, the Tau. So we're going to take a look at what we've learned so far about the rules in Psychic Awakening and take a look at what they kind of mean. So, all right, so this is the Warhammer Community site, of course. We are looking at the article from Monday. It has some background about who Shadowsun is, some more details on her model. We've seen a lot of this before. There's some clarification about her role with the fourth and fifth sphere. And then they get some details on the actual model here that the particular detail that we're seeing here, the inset of her face, I think is not a great look. She has this nose, and we've talked about the nose before. I think it was something where they just kind of included it in the metal model when she was first released, and they just kind of were like, well, it's part of the sculpt now, so I guess we're gonna keep it. And so that's probably why she has such a pronounced nose now. It's not my favorite, certainly, but nothing that a hobby knife can't fix, so not a big deal. Then we go down here, we have some more details on her 2 new Fusion Blaster variants and her 2 new drone sculpts. Of course, only one of those drones is actually a new type of drone, which we'll talk about in a moment. The juicy part here, though, is the rules on her model. So, if you haven't seen this before, she still has a Stalker battlesuit, but it's upgraded. It's different now. It has more arms. So, yeah. So she has a Stalker battlesuit, but it comes with the option of not taking just standard Fusion Blasters, but taking 2 variant Fusion Blasters instead. I've seen some questions about whether or not this is indicative of an overall change to how Fusion Blasters will work for Tau army-wide, and I want to be clear here that there's no evidence to suggest that. In fact, there's evidence to suggest that that's definitely not the case, because these are experimental, unique weapons available only to Shadowsun on her Stalker battlesuit. If something were to change and Stalker battlesuits somehow became a standard issue thing, then yeah, maybe we would see this. But until then, I think we're sticking with standard Fusion Blasters for everybody else. Shadowsun gets these bad boys here. All right, so she can take either 1 Dispersed Fusion Blaster and 1 High Energy Fusion Blaster, or 2 of each. The rule sets on these we speculated on a while ago, and I think I was pretty close. And I don't know. You guys go rewatch that video. Tell me how close I was, but I think I was pretty close here. Dispersed Fusion Blaster is range 18, same as a standard Fusion Blaster. Assault 2, strength 7, -4 AP, D3 damage. And then it has a standard Melta rule. So, the modification here is that it has more shots at a lower strength and lower damage. I think this is, clearly meant to be a marine killing weapon, and it can do that fairly well. It's not particularly, special. I think that a Cyclic Ion Blaster does this job probably better, frankly, but nonetheless, having -4 AP on her is pretty good. The High Energy Fusion Blaster is just a standard Fusion Blaster that can reach a little bit further. It has a 24-inch range, and I think that is a pretty clear winner, right? You are able to use these weapons more often, more effectively. And it occupies a niche that's not occupied by things like Cyclic Ion Blasters or Riptides or anything like that. Or Broadsides, for example. The Fusion Blaster niche is pretty coveted, and so I think this High Energy Fusion Blaster is probably going to be the more favorable option most of the time, is just kind of how it's looking. She kept her command link drone that we've talked about before, but her shield drone is now been replaced with an advanced Guardian Field. And this one I got kind of wrong. So I thought that it was going to give an invulnerable save to units nearby or something like that. It turns out that it does not. So it has a 4-up invulnerable save itself, but then it gives a 6-up feel no pain to units, very important here, says, when a friendly Tau Empire model would lose a wound whilst within 3 inches of this model, roll a d6. On a 6, that wound is not lost. So a few things that I want to point out here. One is that it's for Tau Empire. It's not Sept specific, which is good. That means that in addition to Shadowsun being able to lead any Sept detachment as she'd like, which we'll talk about in a second, she can bring this guy along with, and he can, help that detachment, but also any other detachment that you may bring. So she's really supposed to be a cosmopolitan leader in that way, that she can fit into different detachments, but is still really a hero of the Empire, not just a single Sept. And I like that. I think that's fluffy. I think that's a good rule. Notably, this is not restricted to battlesuits and infantry, unlike the ethereal power. So this is something that can work on other drones, for example. Of course, shield drones already have their feel no pain, but things like marker drones, gun drones, sniper drones, any other type of drone now can have 6-up feel no pain and not worry about dying quite as easily. This works with Savior Protocol. So you can basically convert anything you want into a, demi-shield drone, a semi-shield drone. It has the ability to persist after taking that Savior Protocols. And I think that's probably the easiest application of this. I mean, for infantry, for battlesuits, you can bring a ethereal with and have that utility. But for drones, you can kind of pack them around this one drone and get a lot of benefit out of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see this drone pairing with other drones. Maybe recon drones are a really great pair here too. So this is cool. I'm expecting that, assuming the price is right, that you see this Guardian drone on the tabletop. And that's really the big thing, right? Is price. Well, let's move on to the next thing, and then we'll talk about price. So the next thing that we learned is that she can be included in any Tau Empire detachment without preventing other units in that detachment from gaining a Sept tenet. So she can be in a viewer allowed detachment, not affect whether or not they're getting that tenet. But she herself does not get the tenet unless it is coordinated fire arcs, which is the Tau Sept tenet. The way this is worded can go one or two ways. It can go that either she is either they're just trying to be very specific and not be like, well, she has to be Tau Sept or something like that. Or they are trying to leave the door open for custom Septs, like Space Marines have. And I could see it going either way. It'd be cool if we have custom Septs in the greater good. But yeah, you can read that multiple ways. We'll have to wait to find out what it actually means, whether or not we're getting custom Septs or not. Before we move on to the other news that we have, I want to mention that there's a few things going on here with the 8 or with Farsight. One is that, yes, she's Supreme Commander, so she can potentially be in a Farsight Enclave's detachment. And that's cool. That's interesting. But something that that makes possible is, what if you have Farsight and Shadowsun in the same list? Not in the same detachment, because we still have the limit of 3 and everything, or 1 per detachment. But if they are in the same army, you could call Master of War once, call Master of War again using Shadowsun, and then Master of War a third time using Farsight. And that could potentially be that could potentially be pretty awesome. In order to do that, of course, you would have to bring Farsight Enclaves, which I still think is a tough sell a lot of the times. You would bring the 8, of course, in that scenario, which can be good in the right scenarios, or in the right matchups. But overall, is a very challenging list to play. So I don't see that really becoming the new meta unless we have some other massive changes with the greater good. But it's an interesting combo that is worth spending some time thinking about. The other thing is that we also know that when you order the greater good, you will get some new data cards for the for the 8, and that they are, quote, back, or they are back new and improved or better than ever or something like that. And presumably that means some tweaks to their rule set. So I'm excited to see what that means. I'm assuming it's not going to be a massive overhaul, but something could be very interesting there. The other thing that we learned yesterday was that amongst the new stratagems that will be in the Greater Good is this gem of a stratagem here. It's called Modulated Weaponry. It's 1 command point. It says, use this stratagem in your shooting phase when a set model other than a Titanic model from your army is chosen to shoot with. Until the end of that phase, do not roll to determine the type characteristics of heavy weapons that model is equipped with. They have their maximum values, e.g. a heavy D6 weapon makes 6 shots. So this is potentially very good, right? It's 1 CP, which is not a very high price to pay. I mean, it's the lowest price you could pay for a stratagem, of course. And for a Riptide taking an Ion Accelerator, it's a reasonable price, right? You're taking a heavy D6 weapon, moving it to be 6 shots. That, gives you, on average, a couple more shots. That's a good trade-off, right? 1 CP for that few extra shots. It makes Riptides with Ion Accelerators more viable, a little bit more punchy, and so I'm interested to see how that plays out. But there are other applications of this that I think are exciting, to say the least, but also cause for pause. So basically, there's a few things that we have to point out here about what this is actually going to apply to. It can't apply to Titanic models, so that means things like the Storm Surge are out. It has to be a heavy weapon, meaning that it can't apply to things like Flamers, right, which are assault. And it applies to all the weapons that model has. So if they have multiple random or variable shot weapons, then they all benefit. So something that has multiple random shot weapons, man, what could that be? I don't know, maybe a Ivara. So Ivaras are one model here where there could be significant synergy between this model and this stratagem. So for 1 CP, you are now potentially putting out 9 ion discharge cannon shots, and you are putting out 18 phased plasma flamer shots. Both of these are heavy weapons, right? So they benefit from this stratagem, and that is awesome. I don't think it's quite enough to outweigh the cost that Ivaras are currently pointed at. You give up, right, two Riptides basically for the cost of a Ivara, which is a steep price to pay, especially for something that is shorter range like the Ivara. But maybe this helps. Maybe this gets it really close. It's worth noting that the ion accelerators, the Imperial armor indices are being phased out and will be replaced with new rule sets in the somewhat near future, apparently. So the Ivara could be a completely different beast very soon. But in between the launch of the Greater Good and those revisions, the Ivara has a really nice hill to stand on with this stratagem. Additionally, things like the Tiger Shark with an ion cannon and a Sky Spear missile array, or Sky Spear missile rack, I suppose, are going to benefit as well. So ion cannon's going to be heavy D3, heavy D6 on large model count units. It has 2 of those, so you're potentially getting 12 shots off with an ion cannon off of a Tiger Shark. And then the Sky Spear missile rack is heavy D6, so you're moving again to 12 shots, strength 6, -2 damage. So that basically is a Riptide right there, or close to it. And plus you get the ion cannons. So it's a nice boost to the Tiger Shark here as well. And I think both the Ivara and the Tiger Shark are going to benefit from this. I'm curious to see if there's some lists that come out where those are really featured, or if they're still kind of disruptive to the overall approach of the Triptide commander list that we've been seeing. I don't know if they're gonna work together or not, but I can see this being at least something that pushes those types of models to be more common than they have been previously. Overall, a really cool stratagem. It's basically, it's a strictly better version of experimental weaponry. It's not sept locked, so you don't have to take Borkan. But it does offer the ability for Borkan armies to use experimental weaponry on one unit and use this on a different unit. So if you're taking 2 Ivaras, for example, as Borkan, one can benefit from modulated weaponry and the other can benefit from experimental weaponry, and you are sitting pretty, you're sitting pretty at that point. So, yeah, I am very excited to see this book come out. Particularly, stratagems are going to be really exciting. The overall changes that we saw with Shadowsun, were fine. You know, she is better. It's going to come down to the points. I think really the stratagems are going to be where we see the big changes in playstyle. So I'm looking forward to seeing this. I will be definitely pre-ordering this, and we'll talk about it as soon as I get my hands on a copy. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching and happy wargaming.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over on Patreon. These are the people that really help drive the channel and make things happen. So special thanks to Shifty, Dallas Ellis, Jim Bob, Scott Heater, Nick Steele, Tao Oswald, Jackson, Stephen Cohen, Eric Jackson, Michael Byrne, Zealous Brimstone, Jared Egler, and Chris Kessler.